Reinforcements have arrived.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. 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 Affirmative.
New construction options. Building. Construction complete. New construction options. Building. Construction complete. Construction options. Building.
Vehicle reporting. Affirmative. 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 Yes, sir. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Construction complete. Construction options. Building. Building.
Awaiting orders.
Construction complete. Building. Construction complete. Building. Unit ready.
Yes, sir.
Construction
Acknowledged.
complete. Building. Building. Our base is under
Reporting.
attack. On hold. Cancel. Unit ready. Building. Building.
Yes, sir.
Construction complete. Construction options.
Vehicle reporting. Affirmative.
Unit ready. Building.
Awaiting orders.
Reporting. Acknowledged.
Reporting. Vehicle reporting.
Insufficient funds. Building. Unit ready.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Vehicle reporting. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Awaiting orders. Acknowledged.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Construction complete. Construction options. Building.
Vehicle reporting. Yes, sir. Reporting. Affirmative.
Repair. Unit
Yes, sir.
prepared.
Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Unit ready. Building.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Affirmative. Affirmative.
Unit ready. Building.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged.
Awaiting orders. Vehicle report.
Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative.
Unit ready.
Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Our base is under attack.
Waiting order. Affirmative.
Building.
Yes, sir.
Building.
Vehicle report.
Affirmative.
Repairing.
Reporting. Acknowledged. Comrade.
Unit prepared. Unit ready.
Yes, sir. Reporting.
Construction complete. Construction options. Building.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Unit ready.
Reporting.
Comrade.
Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Yes, sir.
Affirmative. 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 Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. 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 Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Waiting
Unit
affirmative.
lost.
Agreed. Yes, sir. Very well. Very well.
Building. Building. On hold. Cancel. Building.
Yes, sir. Reporting. Agreed. Yes, sir.
Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Unit
Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. 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 Affirmative. Acknowledged. 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 Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Comrade. Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Agreed. Yes, sir. Vehicle reporting. Awaiting orders.
Comrade. Reporting. Affirmative. Yes, sir.
Construction
Yes, sir.
complete.
Acknowledged.
Repairing.
Reporting.
Our base is under attack.
Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative.
Unit repaired.
Reporting.
Acknowledged.
Building.
Comrade. Waiting order. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Yes, sir.
Construction complete. Building.
Waiting order. Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged.
Building. Repairing.
Vehicle report.
Construction complete. Unable to comply. Building in progress. Unit repaired. Repairing. Building. Unit repaired. Unit ready.
Reporting. Affirmative.
Construction
Affirmative.
complete.
Very well.
Building.
Awaiting.
Affirmative.
Insufficient funds.
Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Affirmative.
On hold. Cancel. Building.
Awaiting orders.
Affirmative. Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Construction
Yes, sir.
complete.
Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Ready and wait. Affirmative.
New construction options.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Reporting. Reporting. Yes, sir. Reporting. Acknowledged.
Building.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Waiting order. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Reporting. Affirmative. Waiting order.
Unit ready. Structure sold. Unit repaired. Building.
Vehicle acknowledged.
Comrade, acknowledged.
Acknowledged. At once.
Construction complete. Building.
Ready and waiting. Affirmative. Ready and waiting. Affirmative.
Comrade, affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Yes, sir.
Unit ready. Building. Building.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Unit ready.
Acknowledged.
Building.
Vehicle reporting. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Yes, sir.
Comrade, acknowledged.
Unit ready.
Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Construction complete. Building.
Reporting. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Unit ready. Building.
Vehicle reporting. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Vehicle reporting. Affirmative. Awaiting. Affirmative.
Waiting order.
Unit ready. Building.
Comrade, reporting. Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Unit ready. Building.
Awaiting orders. Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Building. Unit ready. Building.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged.
Construction complete. Building. Unit ready. Building.
Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Construction
Acknowledged.
complete. Building.
Yes, sir.
Unit ready. Building. Construction complete.
Waiting order.
Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. 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 Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Unit ready.
Waiting order. Waiting affirmative. Order. Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Affirmative. Yes, sir.
Our base is under attack.
Affirmative. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Acknowledged. Affirmative. 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 Yes, affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledge. Acknowledge. Affirmative. Acknowledge. Acknowledge. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Reporting.
Unit lost. Unit lost.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Affirmative.
Building.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Construction complete.
Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Building.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledged. 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 Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. 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 Acknowledged. 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 Affirmative. 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 Acknowledged. 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 Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Construction
Affirmative.
complete. New construction options.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Awaiting orders. Acknowledged.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Yes, sir.
Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. 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 Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Yes, sir.
Acknowledged. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative. 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 Acknowledge. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Building.
Vehicle reporting. Yes, sir.
Acknowledged. 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 Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. 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 Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Wait. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Building.
Yes, sir. Affirmative.
On hold. Cancel. Construction complete.
Yes, sir.
Waiting order. Affirmative.
Reporting. Acknowledged. Reporting. Affirmative. Awaiting orders. Yes, sir.
Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative.
Building.
Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. 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 Acknowledged. Affirmative.
ready.
Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Building.
Affirmative. 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 Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. 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 Acknowledged. 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 Acknowledged.
Unit ready.
Affirmative. Affirmative. Affirmative.
Our base is
Acknowledged.
under attack.
Affirmative.
Unit lost.
Very well. Very well. Very well. Very well. Very well.
Unit
Affirmative.
lost.
Agreed. Yes, sir. Very well. At once. At once. Very well.
Unit
Agreed.
lost.
Affirmative.
Building.
Agreed. At once. Very well. Very well. Very well. Affirmative.
Unit
Affirmative. Acknowledge. Affirmative.
Unit
Affirmative.
lost.
Affirmative. Yes, sir. Agreed. At once. Very well. Affirmative. Agreed. At At once. Agreed. Affirmative. Agreed. At once. Affirmative. Very well. Affirmative. Affirmative.
Unit ready.
Affirmative.
Unit lost.
Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Unit lost. Building.
Acknowledge. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. 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 Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Unit lost.
Affirmative. Waiting order.
Unit ready.
Affirmative.
Building.
Vehicle reporting.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Unit ready.
Report. Acknowledged.
Building.
Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Yes,
Unit
affirmative.
lost.
Acknowledged.
Unit lost.
Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. 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 Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Unit lost.
Affirmative. Affirmative.
Acknowledged.
Affirmative. Acknowledge. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledge.
Unit
Acknowledge.
ready.
Acknowledge. Acknowledge.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Yes, sir.
Acknowledge. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledge.
Building.
Yes, sir. Affirmative, comrade.
Acknowledged.
Construction complete. Construction options. Unit lost. Select target. Reinforcements have arrived. Our base is
Waiting
under
order. Yes,
attack.
sir. Yes, sir. Reporting.
Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Building. Building.
Comrade.
Acknowledged.
Waiting.
Affirmative. Affirmative.
Unit ready.
Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Building.
Acknowledged. 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 Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. 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 Acknowledged. Affirmative. 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 Affirmative.
Unit
Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Building. Construction complete.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Reporting.
Acknowledged. Reporting. Affirmative.
Unit
Acknowledged.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Comrade.
Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Waiting. Acknowledge. Acknowledge.
Unit lost. Unit lost.
Comrade. Affirmative. Comrade.
Unit lost.
Affirmative. Yes,
Unit
sir.
lost.
Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Report. Acknowledge. Acknowledge.
Unit
Affirmative.
lost.
Awaiting. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Unit
Affirmative.
lost.
Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. 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 Acknowledged. Ready.
Unit
Agreed.
lost.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Acknowledge.
Building.
Yes, sir. Acknowledge.
Unit lost.
Affirmative.
Reporting. Affirmative. Yes, sir.
Acknowledge. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Unit
Affirmative.
ready. Building.
Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. 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 Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. 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 Acknowledged.
Unit
Acknowledged.
ready.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Reporting. Affirmative. Yes, sir.
Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. 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 Acknowledged.
Waiting
Unit
order at
lost.
once. Very well.
Unit lost.
Yes, sir. Agreed. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Agreed. Affirmative. At once. Yes, sir. Very well. Of course. Affirmative. Agreed.
Unit
Of
lost.
course.
Unit lost. Building. On hold. Cancel. Select target. Reinforcements have arrived. Training. Unit ready. Building. Training. On hold. Cancel.
Ready and waiting at
Construction
once.
complete.
Agreed.
Cannot deploy here. Building.
Yes, sir. Very well. Agreed.
Construction
Affirmative.
complete.
Agreed.
Building.
Reporting. Agreed. Yes, sir. Awaiting orders.
Unit ready. Our base is under attack. Construction complete.
Power on.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Construction complete. Cannot deploy here. Primary building selected. Building. Construction complete. Building.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative. Affirmative.
Construction
Acknowledged.
complete. Building.
Ready and
Agreed.
waiting. Affirmative. Awaiting orders.
Yeah. Charge. Good, baby.
Reporting. Affirmative.
Unit
Affirmative.
lost. Construction complete. Unit lost.
The jump. Good, baby.
Report at once. Agreed. At once.
Unit lost.
At once.
Unit lost.
Affirmative.
Don't you? Power on. Good, baby. Burn. Don't you? Charge.
Mission accomplished.